It was an election that the world watched with quiet tension, a midterm vote that would decide not just the balance of power in Argentina, but the political fate of one of the most controversial leaders in the Americas. Javier Milei, the self-described anarcho-capitalist president of Argentina, faced a nation divided by crisis, corruption scandals, and economic turmoil. Yet, against expectations, his party emerged victorious, aided in part by an unprecedented $40 billion US bailout announced by former President Donald Trump. With more than 99% of ballots counted, Milei's party, Libertad Avanza, secured 40.8% of the nationwide vote, outperforming early projections that placed it closer to 30 to 35%. The opposition, Peronist alliance, Fuerza Patria, came in at 31.7%, while smaller centrist and regional parties divided the rest. Although the result stopped just short of giving Milei a full congressional majority, his gains were enough to transform Argentina's political map. In the lower house, 127 of the 257 seats were contested, and La Libertad Avanza captured 64 seats, along with 12 out of 24 Senate seats. This secured the government's main goal, at least one-third of the lower chamber, allowing Milei to sustain presidential vetoes. Analysts described the outcome as a strategic victory, giving the president breathing space to pursue his ambitious and often polarizing libertarian reforms. Much of the election's global attention stemmed from an unexpected intervention, a $40 billion US bailout unveiled by Donald Trump just weeks before the vote. The financial package, larger than any previous American support for Argentina, was announced as part of a deal that Trump described as a partnership to stabilize a great nation. However, US officials later confirmed that continued disbursement of the funds was conditional on Milei's party retaining control. This sparked widespread debate over whether Washington was indirectly influencing Argentina's domestic politics. On election night, Trump congratulated Milei, calling it a landslide victory, and later remarked from Asia that the win had a lot of help from us. He credited his Treasury Secretary Scott Bessent with overseeing the aid. For many Argentinians, this open acknowledgement confirmed fears of US interference, fueling protests from opposition groups who accused Milei of trading sovereignty for survival. Javier Milei rose to power in 2023 on a wave of frustration with Argentina's chronic inflation, corruption, and political stagnation. Styling himself as a chainsaw economist, he promised to slash government spending, abolish the central bank, and restore individual liberty. His first months in office were marked by drastic austerity measures, cutting tens of thousands of public jobs, freezing healthcare and education spending, and halting infrastructure projects. These cuts won applause from international markets, but provoked fierce backlash at home. By late 2024, inflation, which had topped 200% annually, began to fall, dropping to 30% by September 2025, marking the lowest level in over a decade. Argentina also recorded its first fiscal surplus in 14 years, with GDP growth at 0.3% in August after 3 quarters of contraction. Yet behind the macroeconomic improvement, ordinary citizens suffered. Purchasing power collapsed, more than 250,000 jobs were lost, and 18,000 small businesses shut down. Polls suggested that nearly 70% of households reported difficulty meeting basic expenses. The president's reform drive was soon overshadowed by a string of controversies. A government-promoted cryptocurrency project collapsed, wiping out millions in public investments. His sister and chief of staff, Karina Milei, faced corruption allegations after leaked documents tied her to questionable contracts and political donations. In addition, one of Milei's top party candidates withdrew from the election days before the vote, after admitting to receiving $200,000 from a businessman under investigation for drug trafficking in the United States. Despite these scandals, Milei's supporters remained loyal, framing the controversies as attacks from the political establishment. The president himself leaned into his anti-system persona, declaring during a rally in Buenos Aires, "I am the king of a lost world, and today we passed the tipping point." For many, this was a turning point. Milei had managed to transform a tarnished administration into a populist resurgence. Milei's economic policy hinged on two central pillars: fiscal discipline and foreign financing. Before Trump's intervention, Argentina had already secured a $20 billion IMF loan, of which $14 billion had been disbursed. To maintain the peso's stability, the government burned through much of its foreign currency reserves, forcing officials to seek additional support from Washington. The Trump-backed bailout, larger than any international monetary fund package in Argentina's history, was seen as both a financial lifeline and a geopolitical statement, cementing Milei's ties to conservative allies abroad. Critics argued that the deal reinforced Argentina's dependency on the United States, while others viewed it as essential for restoring market confidence. Still, questions remain over the bailout's sustainability. With Argentina's external debt now exceeding $410 billion and unemployment edging above 9%, economists warn that austerity and foreign borrowing may provide short-term relief but deepen long-term structural fragility. Within hours of the election results, the streets of Buenos Aires filled with both celebration and protest. Supporters waved the yellow and black flags of La Libertad Avanza, chanting Milei's name and singing along to his impromptu anthem, "The King of a Lost World." Meanwhile, opposition groups condemned Trump's bailout as economic colonialism, accusing Milei of using foreign aid to manipulate the democratic process. Political analysts warned that such overt foreign influence could further polarize Argentina, especially given its history of resisting US dominance during the Cold War. Internationally, Milei's victory was celebrated by figures like Brazil's Jair Bolsonaro and Hungary's Viktor Orbán, who praised him as a model for conservative reform. Yet in Europe, the reaction was cautious. The European Union expressed concerns about the erosion of labor protections and social spending, while China, Argentina's second-largest trade partner, warned against policies that could destabilize bilateral cooperation. As Argentina moves forward, Milei's political survival now depends on his ability to strike a balance between reform and stability. With congressional control narrowly out of reach and economic recovery fragile, his government faces a defining test. For his supporters, the midterm win is proof that radical change can succeed against establishment forces. For critics, it's a warning that populism, backed by foreign power and fueled by economic desperation, could reshape not just Argentina, but the political landscape of Latin America. As Milei declared on election night, echoing his American ally, "Now begins the construction of a great Argentina, to make Argentina great again."